Good afternoon and welcome along to Myreside. You're looking at pictures of the Myreside pitch and main stand just ahead of this afternoon's derby between Watsonians and Boroughmuir Bears, and as derbies go, you can't get an awful lot closer than these two sides. Perhaps in football, the Tannadice Street separating Dundee and Dundee United, but Boroughmuir Bears have made the relatively short journey along the road to Myreside, a place they know well because it was their home for part of the Sprint Series competition a little bit earlier in the year. And Dale Clancy, who's alongside me this afternoon, Boroughmuir Bears making that short journey on fine form as well. Second place in the table with Watsonians leading after 5 matches. This is going to be a thoroughly entertaining 80 minutes coming up.
Yeah, both teams like to score tries, and in recent weeks after a little bit of a break in action, you know, Watsonians put a big win in against Stirling Wolves, and Boroughmuir Bears were racking up the points against the Southern Knights at the Greenyard. So both of these teams like to score tries, and you can see there that, you know, you take away the games played, you need to get points on the board. So Boroughmuir Bears and Watsonians, they're the top two in the table, and Boroughmuir Bears will be hoping to try and spring a little bit of a surprise, because Watsonians have been in imperious form so far. But it would put a little bit of pressure on that, you know, that top 2 places in terms of the championship.
Yeah, just looking at this sort of midway stage in the season, quite refreshing to see there as well. 2 Edinburgh sides at the top, considering it was Ayrshire Bulls and Southern Knights that contested the playoff final almost exactly a year ago. They're sitting in 4th and 5th place in the table. Stirling Wolves still to get off and running, of course. Heriot's sitting in 3rd place. So the Edinburgh side's dominating the table, and this afternoon it's going to be more than bragging rights up for grabs as Watsonians look to extend their lead at the top. Boroughmuir look to continue their fine form of late. Looking back, Dale, at some of the fixtures and the results from previous weeks, I would have to say that from a Boroughmuir point of view, at the start of September, their 26-17 victory over Heriot's was perhaps the standout result for them so far this season, illustrating how far they've come.
Yeah, I think that's probably the big part of this this championship. Is from the sprint, there's been a lot of changes in terms of the form of the teams, and Boroughmuir have perhaps been one of the teams that have managed to steady their ship slightly and be a little bit more consistent. That game against Heriot's was perhaps the kind of changing of the guard between those two teams, because Heriot's were a team that were pretty robust, pretty accurate, and they were able to grind out results. And in that occasion, it was Boroughmuir who were able to kind of turn the tables over their city rivals and get that win. But this is a different game. This is a completely different game. This Watsonians team are very, very well drilled. They're skillful and they're very physical. So it's going to be a challenge for the Boroughmuir Bears to step up and in terms of level of intensity to try and get anything from this game.
And of course Watsonians just the one defeat so far this season away at Alloway against the Ayrshire Bulls on the 26th of August, but last time out 66-7 winners over Stirling Wolves. So when they're on song, they are emphatic.
Yeah, they've been brilliant. The games that I've seen Watsonians play this season, they've been excellent, and I think they've got an industrious back row which has been reshuffled this afternoon. But in the backs, the likes of Lee Miller, he was brilliant against Stirling Wolves, as was Dom Coates at fullback. They were really, really impressive. They can interchange players, but you know, they do have a good blend of physicality and also skill.
Let's have a look then at the starting lineups this afternoon. Watsonians, of course, with home advantage. There's the Watsonian side, and we're talking there about the creativity. We understand Patrick Harrison most likely will not have a 2 in his back, but will play in that front row along with Bobby Bratton and Harrison Courtney. And of course they've got the experience of Carl Davis on the bench, but Lee Miller and Rory Brand are going to be important components in that side. So too Ben Muncaster at 8. He's a very valuable player to have in that back row alongside Wilson and Cecil.
Yeah, it's a good team. You know, they've reshuffled the pack. They've got Matt Curry on the bench and Joe Reynolds, and they're 2 really experienced backs. Matt Curry especially, a player who's obviously from the Edinburgh ranks, but you pick out there, I think Lewis Berg perhaps could be one of these players that's going to be quite instrumental in this game, because he can mix it, you know, in terms of skill and physicality in the midfield. And it'll be interesting to see how Conor Eastgate goes, obviously, into the side to replace Joe Reynolds. It'll be an interesting change, but I think this perhaps, you know, alludes to the strength and depth that Watsonians Rugby currently have.
Yeah, Fergus Pringle juggling the pack once more this afternoon for this 1 o'clock kickoff. He'll be more than satisfied, I'd imagine, with his charges and their performances so far this season. Boroughmuir Bears then of course, we mentioned making the relatively short journey. Graham Shield must be delighted to start a campaign on the front foot. They tend to play catch up, or have done so in previous seasons, but sitting second place in the table. There is the lineup today, and again Rory Swan, Jack Bergen. Bergen has been a very influential 10, very good goal kicker as well, and somebody who can, on the park on his day, just keep the points ticking over and keep his side very much in the game if it's going to be a close run thing.
Yeah, and I think to give him that platform, it's going to be the back row players that are going to have to give him that, that field position and that ball to play with and dictate. It's going to be a good battle between the two back rows, but the person I'd probably pick out from there is Rhys Tate. He's just returning back to the squad. Scott McGinley at number 8's a big ball carrier, but he'll be supported well by Tate. He can jackal really, really well. He likes the nitty-gritty of the games, and he'll be trying to put himself about and nail down that number 7 jersey again. So the back rows will have to be on their guard to make sure they can get field position for their halfbacks to spill the ball about. And
a lot of energy on that Boroughmuir Bears bench. So the likes of Murray Johnson, Kerr Johnson will no doubt see them before the conclusion of the tie. Many changes, of course, this season have been made quite early on in matches. Southern Knights have had so many injuries, they've been forced to make changes during matches very early on, and that's changed the complexion of how they've had to approach games. But a lot of teams electing to change personnel at half time. As we have a look down towards the tunnel area, the teams will be making their way out onto the park, and at this stage in the season, Dale, as well, when we're just past that midway point, these players are bound to be thinking about October and about the playoffs. Watsonians, what a 2022 it would be if they were to do the double of winning the sprint series and the overall championship, but they know that not only have they got a difficult match this afternoon, they've got some way to go before they can achieve such a triumph.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a matter of luck as well, keeping the players fit, and a lot of teams have suffered from injury. As you can see, the Boroughmuir players just the subs just going through a little bit of a warm up there, but it's keeping them fit, it's keeping them on the field to play. And at this level, it's about game management, it's about a campaign, it's about how to work with these difficult games and work through hard times. And Watsonians have got themselves in a very, very good position in terms of going into the second half of this campaign. But these derbies, these are the ones that can make you come unstuck at times, and they'll certainly have to be on their guard to make sure that they don't slip up here, and they can keep the pressure on the rest of the teams at the top of the table and make it a kind of shootout for second place to play Watsonians.
Yeah, they can sometimes throw up some unexpected scenarios, unexpected consequences, and just change the complexion of the season for the respective teams. You see Boroughmuir then lined up, Watsonians also out onto the park now, and as you'll no doubt be aware, there will be a minute's silence following the very sad passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The players and all match personnel will line up. Impeccably observed silence as our match referee this afternoon, Rory Campbell, then whistles for the players to break away from their respective lines, get into position and get this match underway. And for the last time I looked at the Myreside pitch, it was so brown and bare in patches, but it's quite lush now after some further groundwork done by the ground staff, of course, and of course some incessant rain in recent times, but pitch in excellent condition.
Yeah, it looks in really good condition, and the conditions here are brilliant for expansive rugby, and I think both teams will welcome that because they do have a lot of pace and power in behind the scrum. So in terms of the conditions of this afternoon's game, it's set up nicely for an expansive game because both teams can certainly mix it. But it's certainly good work, and it's a great platform for these players to show exactly what they're made of.
Yeah, so Watsonians, they're keeping their home colours with Boroughmuir all in blue, and the kick-off tracks back towards halfway. Chance for Dominic Coetzee to pick up. Good powerful run from the fullback up towards the edge of that 22. Very quickly in there was Rory Brand looking to release ball. Penalty awarded though, as the last of the Boroughmuir players on his feet, Hugh and Ferry. So an early opportunity for Watsonians, an early tester for that Boroughmuir back row.
Yeah, textbook from the kickoff, as Lee Miller's just going to get a bit of territory down here, down the field, but it was a pinpoint kickoff, managed to get the big arm up and get the ball back on their side, and it was Ewan Ferry who looked like he was in a good position to steal that ball as Coatsy got isolated, but he just fell off his feet, didn't control his body weight, and gives away the penalty and gives a first opportunity to Watsonians here.
And the first chance we get to see, Patrick Harrison throwing the ball in towards the front of that line. He'll join in the drive. Ball tucked under his right arm at the moment, looking to straighten up, but it's a very crowded, congested mall. They look to splinter away once more, but they've still got Harrison in control of the ball. Boroughmuir arms wrapped round the Watsonians hooker. Looks as if it's eventually going to be recycled, but it's going to be a pick and go rather than through the hands, as the forwards just take it in turns. Challenge coming in there from Scott McGinley, the Boroughmuir skipper. Early opportunity then for Watsonians in the opening seconds of this contest. They look to snatch the ball down. They've done so perfectly there. Rory Brand, it was the scrum half biding his time before peeling away, finding some space in that Boroughmuir defence after some fine work from the forwards. And you felt that the scrum half, well, he was looking to his left-hand side, Dale, to offer up the pass, but he backed himself a wee sniper-like scrum half run in for the try.
Yeah, and I think that you can see the three bodies there shifting across, and the man that was there, Scott Robson, he was the man that was kind of holding guard. He should have been looking after Brand, but it was good sniping from the scrum half, and that just shows you the danger. Boroughmuir are aware that they've got heavy runners, and if they can keep the tempo up, it's going to be hard to stop them so close in. But obviously Brand was aware there that the gap was there, and he went over for a score.
Let's see if his fly half partner can add the extras. He can indeed. Lee Miller, who started the season as a replacement but has become a firm fixture in the 10 and is a steady man at the tiller at 10 for Watsonians.
He's absolutely class. I was actually saying that to the backs coach Nicky Walker during the week, that he is a class act. Against Stirling Wolves, he's just shown his class. He's great with the ball in hand, good kicking. And the welcome seeing a fully fit Lee Miller back in this squad, but Boroughmuir Bears there kicking straight out from the restart. And we were talking about this last night, the Southern Knights Heriots game. Once you concede or once you score, you want to try and settle, and you don't want to give away cheap possession, and Boroughmuir are guilty of that. They're just coughing possession straight back up and giving it back to Watsonians. Yeah,
they've quite settled into the contest. Very, very early stages, of course, just 3 minutes gone, conceding a try early on. Certainly not what Graham Shield had, and I'm sure would not have discussed that, very much guarding against that during his pre-match pep talk in the away dressing room. But a try scorer is in the middle of our picture just now. Rory Brand is spinning the ball from side to side. There he is. Alongside him is Rudy Swan. Different spelling, slightly different pronunciation as well. But, it's now picked up by Ben Muncaster, on then towards Brand, feeding the ball very quickly through the hands of Miller, down that right hand side with some pace and intent. Brand again takes the ball back infield, looking to offload us. Watsonians bring the second row forward, loose ball into play. Brand is able to pick up once more, quickly through the hands. Bobby Bratton in at tight head for Watsonians this afternoon, just short of the 22 as you see, through the hands of Miller once more, out towards the left hand side. Angus Guthrie was coming in off his wing, he backpedals now. Ball just bypasses him just at the moment as it's taken on once more by Muncaster, who goes to deck. In fact, it's Seb Cecil who was the ball carrier that went to deck there. Handling error just short of the 22, it's knocked on. 4.5 minutes of the first half gone. 7-0 to Watsonians, a bright start in the try from their scrum half.
Yeah, and he's the man that's creating that tempo there. If you're a young budding scrum half watching how to generate tempo and try and stretch defences, have a little look there, because the ball's not in the ruck for longer than 2 to 3 seconds. So when the big carriers are getting round, they're getting the ball back quickly, the clear outs coming, they're looking to go again, and Brand is the man that's there obviously looking to dictate that tempo. He's deciding how quick this game's played. Just an unforced error there from Cecil when he tried to take the ball into contact. Gives Boroughmuir the first real opportunity after 5 minutes to have the ball in their hands and see what they can do from deep inside their own half.
They put in at the scrum this time, so it's Swan will feed the ball in just on the edge of that 22. Again looking to recycle. Forwards coming in again, looking to gain some ground for this Boroughmuir side. opting to run it rather than using the boot to gain some distance downfield. But now it is the box kick from Swan, which carries the halfway and pretty much the 10-metre line. Chasing up there was Callum Ram, stayed upright, but that was good defensive work there. Guthrie back towards Brand, the try scorer. Watsonians again trying to gain some ground up towards the halfway line. Brand now just controlling it, readying himself for the box kick. Delivering it now, giving chase is Guthrie. And Guthrie with the tackle there on Swan, a foot in touch. So that was good cover work there from the left winger Guthrie, following the flight of the ball, putting Swan into a bit of pressure there, cornering the scrum half, and as a consequence it's a throw in for Watsonians short of that 22.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that you can give the opposition possession. You can either give them it by an unforced error, or you can actually just ask them to do something with the ball, and I think that's what Watsonians have been brilliant at so far this season, is they've actually been able to, you know, manage the game. You could see there that it was slowing down. The pace was dropping, and they just put the box kick in and just say, look, try and defend it, and they've got a fortunate attacking position again off the line out.
George Pounder and Bob Nevins, part of the refereeing team this afternoon, as we watch Watsonians, and Seb Cecil again taking the ball into contact, picked up by Brand. On once more, just bypassing Bobby Bratton there. Brand squatting down once again, has a little look towards the right hand side, spinning pass there from Miller on towards Berg. He was slowed up though as he was taking the ball almost upright. He's still on the deck at the moment, trying to plant the ball back. Brand once again on towards Miller, has a little look at who's inside him, Eastgate as well, who's a real influential figure alongside Berger. A fine partnership in the centre for Watsonians, with Eastgate at 12, Berg at 13. Brand tumbles to the ground, the ball firmly in the hands there of Adam Scott as he gets back to his feet, and Boroughmuir will look to clear from 5 metres in from touch inside that 22 with 7 minutes on the clock, and still 7 points on the scoreboard for the home side, who are in front 7-0.
Yeah, a decent break there again from Watsonians. I don't know if this is going to... Yes, just makes touch there for Boroughmuir, but the man that was trying to field that there, Angus Guthrie, you could see him when he was running down there. He had a coacher on the outside of him, but the gap just was not opening to either pass or to go alone. What ended up happening is he went on his own and got isolated, and Adam Scott could get over the ball and just try and steal that back. So they can relieve the pressure, and Boroughmuir will be hoping to try and get some momentum in this game, because so far 8 minutes in they've not really had much to shout about so far.
There's Ian Carmichael's throw, down and gathered one-handed by Swan. Scrum half did well, taken on there by the number 8 and captain Scott McGinley. Tries to drive further into Watsonians territory. Ball almost dislodged from Boroughmuir hands, and Boroughmuir eventually penalised there on the deck. 7 points to 0, the home side lead, and a chance for them to work it down into Boroughmuir territory once more through this Lee Miller kick.
Yeah, that's disappointing from Boroughmuir again. It's, but you know, testament to the pressure that's coming from Watsonians. But that's first phase. They're getting the ball off the top. Swans trying to hit a runner. They get round the corner, and then it was Marcus Goodwin who was trying to carry the ball. Just got, you know, caught in the wrong position. Seb Cecil over the ball and just makes a meal of it, and then forces Rory Campbell's hand to offer up the penalty. And this is what Watsonians do to teams. They starve them of the ball. They suffocate them and frustrate them, and get themselves in some good field position as well. And
again, they've executed the line out very quickly, taken on there by Campbell Wilson on the deck up towards the edge of the 22. Brand hurdles a player on the ground and is able to offload, and it's carried forward by Lewis Ball into that 22. Brand over the ball at the moment. Boroughmuir though winning the penalty. Better defence from the visiting side. No further damage done to their cause just at the moment.
Now I feel that Phillips and Ball, when they were trying to carry, perhaps cancelled each other out and got themselves in the wrong position, which it did allow a slightly unorthodox steal, or a chance to try and steal the ball, and Rory Campbell just knew that the Boroughmuir were probably in a more advantageous position than Watsonians were, and gives them a penalty. But you know, again, you look at the field position that we're in just now. Boroughmuir deep inside their own half still, and Watsonians, you know, they're telling them you're going to have to run from deep or try and do something to try and break this defence.
Carmichael again with the throw, once more aiming for Ewan Ferry in that line. Carmichael has it back once again. The clearance to touch was off the side of the boots and not quite as much distance, but that box kick now, Brand underneath it does well, is able to gather still inside Boroughmuir territory, in a bit of a bear hug there with Callum Ram, but it comes back now towards Lewis Ball. Tries to power run in there. Box kick from Brand. It will bounce a couple of times into that 22. That's just going to trundle over into that in-goal area. Followed all the way by Callum Ram. Brand, you could see the intent there, but there was no immediate chase on from Watsonians, and 2-3 Boroughmuir players were able to guide the ball back.
Yeah, and I think with he tried to put a little shoulder in as well. It's not like a scrum half to try and start a little rammy and open play, but a good play from Brand overall, because he notices that the play was getting a little bit flat. There was space there. He kicks it in behind, and you look at Boroughmuir, they're now still back on their goal line. They've got to kick the ball back, and it's Watsonians now to run through Muncaster.
Yeah, Muncaster as well, gathering the ball at number 8, relishing the opportunity to run into green plane there, because Boroughmuir were obviously kicking it back downfield and awaiting the response from Watsonians, and it was a clean take from Ben Muncaster, who's been a feature of Edinburgh in recent seasons. Professional player with a good few appearances to his name as a Edinburgh back row forward. This afternoon in the maroon and white of Watsonians, and watching Miller again ensuring the ball gets into the 22, but certainly not his finest kick to touch, slightly slapped himself.
Yeah, I think that's just scuffed off the side of the boot, and it's not the usual kick that we're used to seeing from such a casual position there from Lee Miller, but it still went out. This is still a very good position for Watsonians to attack from, and Harrison now has to hit his target.
And Harrison does find Muncaster in the back of that line. He was flying high to gather that ball in the line out. It's back now with the Watsonians hooker, and he's been driven forward. No opportunity for him to look up just at the moment at what's in front of him. The Boroughmuir Bears captain trying to get just a hand on the back of the Watsonians jersey, and just coming in round the corner there as Watsonians, their drive comes to nothing. The Boroughmuir supporters, many of them inside Myreside this afternoon, applauding the efforts of their side's defence.
Yeah, I might look like I'm an expert on forward play, but I certainly amn't. But I think Harrison's guilty there of not listening to his scrum half. He looked like he was swallowed up at the back of that maul. It started turning, and I don't think he really knew where he was. And you could see Brand was shouting cancel. He was wanting that ball out to play rugby, and it's been swallowed up there by Boroughmuir. So defensively at the maul, really good work from Boroughmuir Bears. But I think Harrison will be gutted with himself there that he didn't allow that ball to be released to play some rugby.
Swan then feeds the ball in. Another Boroughmuir scrum, but again, as Dale mentioned, deep inside their own half of the field. They've got to gain some ground and territory. McGinley then from the back of the scrum, trying to get some distance. It worked its way back to the hooker Carmichael. Boroughmuir then looking to assess their options at the moment. It's going to be a box kick from Swan, the scrum half, and that immediately goes into touch just on the fringes of the 22. 13.5 minutes of the first half gone. The try coming 2 minutes into the first half. Sniper score from Rory Brand. The Watsonians scrum half converted by Lee Miller, who's skippering the Watsonian side this afternoon. And it's the league leaders who are leading by 7 points to 0. They have the throw in, courtesy of Patrick Harrison. This time it's Lewis Ball that wins in the middle of that line. Congestion once more inside that Boroughmuir 22. Again, Watsonians look to try and straighten up. This time Brand is able to come in and offload and find his number 8 Muncaster, and once more he carries with some purpose in and around the fringes of the 22 through the hands of Miller. Now it's Eastgate. He can be a very dangerous figure, but loses possession of the ball, and Boroughmuir now work it down the right hand side, come away with it. Ram's kick downfield. It's Patterson that's giving chase. Patterson's an accomplished fullback as well, but playing on the wing this afternoon. And Harry Patterson, nimble footwork from Patterson, the youngster. Caught eventually before he can get to the 10-metre line, but Brand in behind him. Brand finds a little gap, away he goes, but again tackles coming in, and the inside centre there, Scott Robinson with a challenge there and a tackle on Brand. It comes back on the Boroughmuir side, and it's with their fly half Bergen now. One-handed offload on the deck, goes a little loose. Adam Scott plays the ball on with his boot. Watsonians trying to mop up on the edge of their 22. The referee this afternoon is Rudy Campbell. He brings play to a halt. 15 minutes of the first half gone. High time we heard again from Dale.
Yeah, Conor Eastgate, when he was trying to attack off that phase deep inside the Boroughmuir half, he just got stripped in contact, and then Boroughmuir had a chance to try and break free. And that's when the game opens up, and I thought Patterson perhaps was going to take advantage of the gaps and break away, and Brand, when he eventually got his hands on the ball, you could see he was looking for that offload with Guthrie on the shoulder, but he just couldn't get his arm free, he couldn't get it free in time, so when he's travelling to the ground it's just bobbled forward, and then obviously he's just got a little bit scrappy on the ground there as they tried to exploit the gaps that were opening up, because when the game becomes unstructured, that's when the gaps in defence arise, but neither team there are able to really execute. But you can see there it's dangerous, at this level. You can have control of the game for 20 minutes, you can be in the best position, and then all of a sudden you've got your backs to your own post a lot closer than you're anticipating, and the other team can go the length. We've seen it in Super 6 before, we've seen teams go the distance and go from deep inside their own half, but this is the first time that Boroughmuir have really ventured inside the Watsonians half at all in this first half.
I've got a view of a smattering of spectators in the main stand at Myreside, many of them lined along by the edge of the pitch to get a slightly closer view on this somewhat autumnal Edinburgh afternoon. Not too much of a breeze, a little cooler than it's been of late, but very pleasant conditions nonetheless for this game, played at the sort of midway point in the FOSROC Super 6 series, and 3 Edinburgh sides involved of course in the competition, all 3 occupying the top 3 places as things stand at the moment. These are the top 2. Watsonians leading this afternoon. This 1 o'clock kick-off by 7 points to 0. And against their near neighbours, Boroughmuir Bears, who are second in the table, 18 points from the 5 matches they've played. Brand feeds the ball into this Watsonian scrum. Arms coming together between the 2 scrum halves. Brand watches the action. Newcastle was trying to play it with the side of his boot. The referee though intervenes with another set play as Brand picks the ball up once more.
I need you to stay square from the start.
You can see the power in the scrum that Watsonians have. It was a similar case last night for the Knights. They had the upper hand in the scrum. Couldn't really make it count, but you can see there that they've got a lot of control in that forward area. They're dictating when the nudge is coming on, how they want to control the ball. I think Brand was a bit disappointed that it didn't come to fruition, but it certainly it looks like Watsonians have got the upper hand in the scrum.
And you look at Bobby Bratton again, play it. The last time I watched him came off the bench was very effective in a victory against the Ayrshire Bulls, 34 points to 23. But when they score 66 points against Stirling Wolves, you know that the capabilities are not just within the backs but within the forwards as well, because they always like to take it in turns to get tries on the board.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of this team. I was watching that game, and you would think it was such an emphatic victory it would be a bit of a non-event, but it was a really entertaining game. The rugby that Watsonians was playing was breathtaking at times. They were doing it with a lot of pace. The skill set, the basic skills were brilliant to watch, and Stirling Wolves just couldn't deal with them. But and it's certainly that just so far. And Boroughmuir defensively have been pretty strong, and I think they've frustrated Watsonians, and they're finding it hard to unpick this defence.
Yep. Players getting into the groove after a week off last weekend, of course, as Brand just loses possession. Maybe took his eyes off it slightly, but helped out by Miller, his fly half partner there, as Watsonians again driving beyond that 10-metre line. Boroughmuir just occupying some space, reorganising the defence. Ball out towards that right hand side, snatched by Boroughmuir, and suddenly they have it. Pass from Robertson out towards the left hand side. The referee though will bring play back for an earlier infringement between that 10 and 22. Watsonians knocking the ball on, so Boroughmuir will have the opportunity, a scrummage outside of their 22 on this occasion, so a chance for them to work a position inside Watsonians territory as we're approaching the end of the first quarter. It's been a tentative opening 18 minutes or so. We often see that in FOSROC Super 6 matches. There's not too many that come alive right at the very, very start of the game. We did have an early score, of course, in 2 minutes, the only score of the game so far, but other than that there's not been any clear-cut opportunities or openings for either team.
No, and I was just looking down the team sheets there, and I can see that there is changes from the previous game. There's 6 in the Watsonians team, so I think that continuity and those partnerships are still taking a little bit of time to gel. Obviously the introduction of likes of Phillips and Muncaster are big players, so they're taking a bit of time. There's a lot of errors so far, but Boroughmuir now in the attack.
McGinley with a powerful run there at number 8, the skipper, Now it's taken on by Rhys Tate. Boroughmuir will look for more opportunities to get Tate involved, particularly in the go forward, as Boroughmuir now work it out towards their right hand side. Once more Callum Ram occupying some space on that right hand channel, picked up immediately by Swan and recycled ball, but the Bears in their blue jerseys and the dark coloured shorts then trying to work something from their own 10-metre line. Better play this time from Ronan Kerr. The two centres trying to link up well over on that left-hand side into the Watsonians 22. Suddenly an opportunity for Boroughmuir. The deepest line position, they've really been certainly in open play inside the Watsonians half, and just as they find half an opportunity to really hurt that Watsonians defence close towards the try line, the ball is knocked forward according to our match referee Rory Campbell, and play will come to a halt just for a moment before we have the next set piece, next scrummage. 7-0 to Watsonians, but that was much better from Boroughmuir in the go forward.
Yeah, broken field running. I think it was the right decisions that were made as well. Ronan Kerr managed to break the line and get the ball through the hands. They just couldn't get manipulate that 2-on-1 situation. It was well defended by Watsonians, and it was brilliantly defended by that man with the ball in his hand. And now Brand at the end, he noticed that Swan was taking a little bit of time at the back of the ruck to clear the ball away, and he just came round the corner and just suffocated him, and it was Swan that ended up knocking the ball on, which is giving the ball back to Watsonians. But it's certainly a tetchy affair. A couple of errors in there, and it makes for interesting viewing, certainly.
Brand then feeds the ball in. Good work from Robertson and Kerr, the two Boroughmuir centres, to get a little bit of an injection of pace into their forward attack. Through the hands of Miller then. It comes downfield. Clancy and Harry Patterson along with Berg and Eastgate and Guthrie all in the backs for Watsonians this afternoon, as that's returned with a little bit of interest. Almost trapped there by Eastgate. Played back downfield, ball bounces and ends up going straight into touch for the looks of it, as the Boroughmuir players are now heading back into Watsonians territory. So again, just not quite got the radar on there as not quite as well. I was going to say not quite as much edge of pitch to aim for, but that gives you an idea of what there is between the lines and the stand. Miller will be disappointed with that effort.
Yeah, well, but that's two poorly executed kicks, and for a fly half, that's it should be their bread and butter. It's an error there, but you can see as soon as the errors come in, it opens the door slightly for the opposition. Boroughmuir, they had a couple of errors earlier on, but for the last 5-6 minutes, Watsonians have been kind of dropping balls and giving Boroughmuir a glimpse of an opportunity.
Ewan Ferry doing well to win the ball in the line at once more. Rhys Tate tries to carry it towards the edge of the 22. In comes Swan, looking at the opportunities here. Immediately brings in Calma Atkinson, second row forward. Puts the ball up towards the edge of the 22, needs Swan's help. Has it now, works its way back now towards Ronan Kerr. Outside centre, making his way purposefully up towards the edge of that 22. Watsonians remaining disciplined, trying to stay onside as it's through the hands then of the Boroughmuir forwards and backs intertwined. Atkinson was lifted off the deck there. Delicate little kick from the scrum half. That's allowed to bounce. That's going to be a tricky one to defend. It ends up going into touch. Boroughmuir with the chase on down that left hand side. That looked an intelligent piece of play there from the scrum half. It was certainly opening up a few options for Boroughmuir down that left hand side, and they're having a better little spell inside the fringes, in and around the fringes of that Watsonians 22.
Yeah, and I think Ronan Kerr's getting a little bit of joy in the midfield channels. It was obviously a penalty. I think it was Cecil who never rolled away. It was either Cecil or Ball who got stuck into the ruck, couldn't get their bodies away in time. So they had a bit of a free ball to run with and play with, and Swan opted for the foot race. But you can see that they're getting a little bit more joy in those wider channels. Kerr is certainly finding his way into the defensive line to try and break it, which is sucking the rest of the defence in, and that's how the gaps are created. But that is another very, very poor kick. That's a shocking kick there to try and get to touch and set up that platform. But you can see Swan here just try to chip it over. The on-rushing Boroughmuir players, just not enough pitch there to gather the ball and go over for a score. But that's a criminal error there from Boroughmuir to cough up possession from the penalty.
Jack Bergen will be bitterly disappointed, because that was a very kickable 3 points, and opting to reject that particular route to getting their first points of the afternoon in favour of going to the corner. And from his position, yeah, he'll be bitterly disappointed with that, to see it go out in the full, presenting an opportunity for Watsonians to clear downfield courtesy of this scrummage. 24 minutes gone. I'd imagine that would leave Graham Shields seething, but he'll be mindful of how well Jack Bergen has played, particularly kicking from hand and kicking from tee this season. He's been a consistent performer for Boroughmuir, so he'll not want to replicate that mistake during the course of this game, trying to atone for that error. 7-0 Watsonians lead, low scoring opening 24.5 minutes. Brand, the try scorer, feeds the ball into this Watsonian scrum on the edge of their 22, and looking to release play downfield. It's played left footed down over the head there of Callum Ram. Dom Coetzee in at full back. We mentioned Harry Patterson's played there, he's on the right wing, and there's an early change with Mark McGinley on for Marcus Goodwin. So a replacement at tight head for Boroughmuir inside the first 25 minutes of the game. A little change in that front row, Dale.
Yeah, I think that's perhaps maybe a signal of the pressure that the front rows come under, because the Watsonians pack certainly have the upper hand in that scrum, and McGinley will give them a little bit more bulk and size in that front row, but it's maybe been premeditated, but it's certainly a change that perhaps was needed to try and change the tide of the pressure that we're getting up front.
And that Boroughmuir throw, ball deflects off hands, picked up there by Patrick Harrison, trying to gain some ground, snatched back by Boroughmuir. Swan very quick in one movement with the box kick. Bounce certainly doesn't evade Angus Guthrie. He's got time to straighten up, look at what's in front of him and make halfway. Guthrie then is forced to the ground. Brandon behind him again. Lively scrum half, a float to Muncaster. Dangerous player, professional experience of course with Edinburgh, and an important cog in this Boroughmuir wheel, this Boroughmuir machine, just at this Watsonians machine I should say at the moment. Muncaster of Watsonians of course, as that's played forward there by Miller, and again just watching the assistant referee squatting down just to watch the flight of the ball to see if it would bounce and go into touch. Boroughmuir have it once more. Callum Ram then plays it downfield, and the kicking from hand, it's not been textbook this afternoon there.
No, there's a slight breeze. It's just making it a little bit awkward, but I was nervous there when I seen Lee Miller kick the ball, and everybody kind of stopped thinking it was going to go out in the full, but Bob Nivens did have a good look, and you could see that it was just bounced this side of the line, and Boroughmuir then cleared their lines downfield, and they managed to again get out of their own half. But Watsonians, you feel they're starting to grow back into this game. There's been about 10 minutes where they've been, the Boroughmuir have certainly been in the game, but Watsonians are starting to kind of get a feel of it again, have a little bit joy with the ball in hand. But that's an accurate line out from Patrick Harrison, and it gives Boroughmuir a chance.
Now Boroughmuir with their inside centre. Scott Robinson has been doing a lot of defensive work. He's leading the charge at the moment down the left hand side. They go once again looking for some joy. Swan this time on to Ferry. Ferry is tackled well there by Pierce Phillips. Again huddling the players on the deck. Swan this time trying to make some ground and trying to continue the momentum that is building in this Boroughmuir side. Swan again, look past there from Robinson out towards the left hand side, snatched very quickly by Coetzee, and the referee penalising Watsonians there, possibly not rolling away, trying to get the signal, but 7 points to 0 remains the scoreline, creeping towards the half-hour mark, and Boroughmuir continue with this territory inside the Watsonians half, as we see there Pierce Phillips, who was involved in a few heavy collisions a few moments ago, just having a word with one of the medics.
Yeah, there's been a lot of penalties so far in this game, a lot of ill discipline. I've not made a judgment yet if it's just Rudy Campbell a bit too keen on his whistle, or if it is the player discipline, but it's certainly made this game disjointed, and when teams have got a lot of errors, it's that puts paid to it as well. That's a contributing factor, but Boroughmuir are we hoping they can be accurate here with the line out, which to make the first hit the jumper and set up that driving maul.
And it'll work its way back, I'm sure, to Carmichael. We can see Carmichael now in control of the ball, almost losing the jersey there. Is scrum half Swan now in behind, but Robinson again glancing down, perhaps not fully following the flight of the Swan pass there, and a handling error in around the edge of the Watsonians 22. So Boroughmuir no opportunity to get the backs involved on this occasion, and the stop-start nature of this FOSROC Super 6 match between teams in first and second place, the stop-start nature continues a minute shy of the half-hour mark, and just that try coming 2 minutes into the game courtesy of Rory Brand.
Yeah, there's been about 3 occasions Boroughmuir have off first phase ball or second phase ball they've tried to strike a move, and there's been one of these errors like that knock on there. There was a knock on earlier on as well, when they were trying to get ahead of steam, and it just gives the opposition the ball back to either relieve the pressure or you invite it back on yourself. And there's a couple of opportunities that Boroughmuir have had where they could put a little bit of pressure on the scoreboard. You know, they've kicked to the corner, the second kick obviously made touch, but the first one before that went out in the full, out in the dead goal area. So it's, you know, there's careless mistakes in here which is kind of contributing to the fact that it's only 7-0 so far, but it's a tetchy affair, and I think Watsonians starting to feel the pressure as well. It's a game of fine margins, and there's a lot of points up for grabs in terms of the overall championship, and I think it's shown in the nervousness of both sides.
Yeah, I suppose as well from a supporter's point of view, whichever team you're following this afternoon, you'll be disappointed just by the sheer number of knock-ons, because it's limiting the number of opportunities to see either side work the ball through the hands, as Brand now then plays it right-footed downfield. That is a kick with some distance. Adam Scott is after it. Scott spins round, the Boroughmuir fullback plays it downfield centrally. This is Lee Miller. Miller then takes his time, angles a kick down that Boroughmuir left-hand side. Again, they've got players back. Joe Jenkins following the flight of the ball. It's a high Gary Owen with a little bit more distance, taken by Cutseer into the tackle. Watsonians still with ball in hand at the moment. It will be back, it will be Brand that will look to execute something here. It will pass towards the right-hand side, and then Boroughmuir, their defence reorganises. The Watsonians attack does likewise. Muncaster ball just underneath his legs as Brand now launches another one into the heavens, followed all the way out to bounce as well, and the bounce just bypasses Joe Jenkins there, puts the Boroughmuir winger under a little bit of pressure. The referee with the outstretched left arm though, and Boroughmuir now allowed to work it through the hands, but still inside their own half of the field. Powerful run here from Kerr, still he's going, great determination, one-handed offload on there towards Atkinson. Good work from the outside centre and a lock forward, and Kerr once again on in towards the left-hand side it goes. Ronan Kerr has tried to be the architect of a few meaningful attacks inside this Watsonians half of the field in the first half. Back it comes towards halfway. Boroughmuir again just assessing their options. Watsonians in a solid line, protecting their own 10-metre line at the moment. And the referee spotting another Boroughmuir knock-on. The knock-ons are mounting up either side in this first half. 8 minutes until the interval. 7-0 the scoreline. No scoring since the second minute of the game. Yeah,
and I think they were calling that Muncaster was offside there. So it'll be interesting to see what Rory Campbell's going to do here. But it looked like he'd came from deep, and he was already lining up the opposition attacker. And we'll certainly see what Rory Campbell and Lee Miller having a bit of a conversation. So we'll see what his decision's going to be here. But going all the way back to that scrum earlier on when Rory Brand chose to go to the blind side and kick downfield, he got good distance. So if you're just going from the whistle to whistle when the referee's done it, you know, Watsonians made a 30-metre gain there, and that's a little bit of game management coming into that, because, you know, there's a bit of aerial ping-pong battle. There was a bit of a bright spark there for Boroughmuir when they could have got a bit of go forward, but then the knock-on comes into it, and that's where you make those little territorial gains. And it all came from a little bit of initiative from that man there with the ball in hand, Rory Brand, to see that there was a gap in the open field on the blind side, and they can try and sneak away and eat away at that territorial advantage. So, you know, if you're going whistle to whistle, it's a territorial gain for Watsonians, but, you know, apart from that, it's still been a sloppy last couple of minutes with both teams really not doing too much to test the opposition.
Yes. Time back on.
Well, Brand has certainly put himself about this afternoon, as the offside decision given against Watsonians and most likely given against Muncaster, a decision that seemed to frustrate Lee Miller. His facial expression, he was one less than impressed as he left the referee after a quick word. and that kick takes Boroughmuir down now towards the edge of the 22. So here's a set play. Carmichael's in position with the throw-in, and Boroughmuir now getting players ready and steady in that line-up for the throw-in. Excellent camera angle there, showing that the collision coming together as Atkinson was very much the player that Boroughmuir were looking to pick out in that line. Watsonians then just protecting that edge of the 22. Another box kick from their try scorer in scrum half, which almost reaches halfway. Just ricochets off the forearms and chest there of Adam Scott as the Boroughmuir fullback on the halfway line was leaping up to try and get a clean catch of the ball under some pressure from the onrushing Watsonians players. 6.5 minutes until half time, and Watsonians, the league leaders, are still in front by 7 points.
If the kick chase wasn't as good as it was, I think Scott could have perhaps gathered that, but just with the second bite that he had at it, he got clattered, which meant that he was travelling back the way as the ball just lingered in the air and just fell out of his grasp. So it's another knock-on, but this game's really, not had many phases like periods of play over a minute and a half. There's been so many errors from both sides, but I'm sure that one of these teams is going to grab it by the scruff of the neck, and it's going to be important up to half-time who can get the next points.
Brand on to Miller. Watsonians now trying to inject a little bit of pace. Patterson comes in, tries to evade the challenge from Ronan Kerr. Kerr, the outside centre, did very well indeed to slow up the Watsonians winger. Comes back now towards Brand. He picks up, has a look at the options towards his right hand side as Watsonians bear down on the edge of that Boroughmuir 22 once more. Through the hands of Miller again. A flatter pass this time with some pace coming onto the ball as it's played. Brand again, on this time towards Seb Cecil, one of the vice captains in the Watsonian side. Brand has time to measure the pass once more and bring further forwards into play. 4 is loose ball over the ball carrier at the moment. This is Eastgate on now towards the centres, and Kutsia comes in at fullback as well to help out that midfield. Patterson following his fullback. Brand with the pass, still inside that 22. Boroughmuir's defence a little bit stretched. Brand wanting to get on with things in a hurry, not surprisingly. Opportunity to get another score before the interval with 5 minutes of the first half left to play. Momentum perhaps dropped just ever so slightly as Watsonians still have it. They're trying to peel away from these Boroughmuir attempted tackles. Brand again, round the corner. Watsonians are trying to go and they're in for the score. Sheer power in the end, driving Watsonians over that try line for a second score inside the final 5 minutes of this first half. And Ben Muncaster positioning himself brilliantly there as we get to see the try again. Once more it's Brand on towards Muncaster, rounding the corner, rounding the tackle, coming in there from Rudy Swan. Over he goes for the try, and his presence was always going to be important today, Dale.
Yeah, definitely. There's 3 things in that. We just said that the game hadn't really been, hadn't been together for about a minute and a half. It was stop-start. That was about 2 minutes of play. So 2 minutes of play at a tempo which Rory Brand was dictating, because the clear-outs were really good. He could get the ball away from the breakdown, no later than 2 seconds. And in that man there, Muncaster, when you're loitering in that 15-metre channel, you're usually going to find a back there, and that's exactly what happened. He got in between the 2 defending players. They get sucked in because they know they've got to try and bring the big ball carrier down, and there's the option of the offload, and then he could just waltz in, power through and get that score. So it was Watsonians who really needed to try and breathe some life into this, and they've done just that.
Miller then looking to add the extras. 12-0, looking to make it 14 before half time. That's swinging just wide of that left hand post. So Miller successful with 1 from 2, and Watsonians now 12-0 in front, approaching the final few minutes of the first 40. Going to be interesting discussions in either dressing room, and just the number of unforced errors. It has been an error strew in 37 minutes, but that said, two quality finishes in the 2 tries.
Yeah, 2 good tries, and that's kind of, from the restart there, a sloppy ball doesn't go to hand, and Watsonians obviously looking to try and exit here from inside their own half and just control the rest of this first half. Time's on their side, but I'm sure both sets of coaches at half time will be having choice words with both their teams, because there's been a lot of errors throughout the opening 38 minutes.
Yeah, neither side just on song at the moment as Brand appears on that right hand side, and he seems to be just about everywhere in the park. Very switched on this afternoon, Rory Brand, scoring the opening try. Much of the work for that second try coming through the scrum half as well, finished off by Muncaster. That's played downfield by Rory Swan, who's looking to do likewise for a Boroughmuir side that have looked somewhat out of sorts after continued improvement during the course of the season, which of course started with a 27-10 win for Boroughmuir Bears against Stirling Wolves. Watsonians also winning away from home 36 points to 12 down at Southern Knights, that back at the start of August. And here we are with these two sides, the top two in the FOSROC Super 6 league table, halfway through the season as Jack Fisher wins the ball in the line out this time for Boroughmuir. 90 seconds until half time. They're forced sideways, but can they keep the ball in play? That was good work then by Robinson was involved, so too was Carmichael, and the ball is certainly there to be played as Watsonians just forcing the issue defensively. Boroughmuir forwards again, just reorganising. This time the ball carries Callum Atkinson. Back it comes quickly through the fly half. Bergen on towards Tate, who's grounded. This time the loose head, Callum Smith takes the ball forward, but it's just a matter of inches before he'll require the services of Swan again. Swan once more, onto the back row forward and Captain McGinley. Swan in behind him. Fly half is Bergen. Ball goes loose. Watsonians juggled, comes back towards Callum Ram. The referee once again identifies the error just on the edge of the 22. Double knock on. Watsonians first to infringe, judging by that signal, and we're into the final minute of the first half, Dale.
Yeah, and I think if you were to kind of sum up this first half, I would probably play that last minute of this game, because you know, it was a team on the attack, really not going anywhere, and then it ends in a couple of errors and a bit of sloppy play. And you know, and I think that's what sometimes happens in these games. The power and physicality. Both these teams are powerful. You know, they've got a lot of strike runners in behind the scrum, but up front they like to try and steal the ball. They like a fight on the floor, and they've almost cancelled each other out in that aspect. So that's contributed to the errors that have been in this game. But you know, if you were to try and say if this has been a classic so far, it certainly hasn't. But there's a lot of rugby still left to be played in this game, and it'll be interesting to see the reaction at half time, and I think that adds to the kind of the intrigue of this fixture.
This will be the final fling in this first half. Watsonians are just going to ping the ball out to play and then head towards the dressing room. The simplest of tasks there for Angus Guthrie as he makes his way towards the home dressing room. Watsonians then leading by 12 points to 0. 2 tries coming sort of either side of the half. Rory Brandt scoring the first of the 2 tries in 2 minutes. Ben Muncaster's coming 4 minutes from the interval. And the league leaders in front by 12 points to 0. So an error-strewn first half, but there have been some highlights. Let's take a look back at some of those in the first 40 minutes. 2 minutes into the first half then, you can see just in the middle of the picture with outstretched right arm, scrum half Rory Brand just directing operations, seizing the initiative after his forwards doing a lot of work. He's able to pick up the ball, his ghost past the centre Scott Robinson and over for a try.
Yeah, if you keep an eye on the big number 4 that runs round the ruck in a minute, you know, you'll see that his position is pivotal in creating that gap as well. And Brand, like all good scrum halves, you know, spots a gap quickly, and you can see him just running round now. The gap opens up and the defenders go with big Lewis Ball, create the gap for Rory Brand, and he squeezes in for a first score. And after a minute, we thought this was going to be one of those games where Watsonians would run away with it.
Yeah, no, there's been a few handling errors, there's been a few offside decisions given as well, and Boroughmuir here were on the attack just on the edge of the halfway line, looking to build, and they've certainly got themselves in the latter stages of the first half deeper into the Watsonians half of the field here, but this was a sort of contentious decision given against them. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see when the scrum half's got his hands on the ball, and I think this was one of the ones that it could have turned the tide of the first half. He's got his hands on the ball there, and I think to be honest with you, I think looking at it in real time without it slowed down, it looked like Muncaster was actually onside. But you know, it's he certainly, I don't think he'll be disappointed because he had a bit to play in this second try.
Yeah, here we are, 4 minutes from half time. Once more Brand on to Muncaster. Muncaster rounding the attempted tackle there from Rory Swan, the scrum half, closing in on the try line, and despite the best efforts of the Boroughmuir covering defence, it was Muncaster, the Edinburgh professional player with that experience, that was in round the corner to score the try. The second try then for Watsonians. There was the challenge coming in. A second attempt was made by Jack Fisher, but by then Muncaster had the power and the direction towards the line. He wasn't going to be stopped.
Yeah, and it was his work rate as well round the corner, because he was the guy that passed the ball from the phase before that. He was the guy that passed it from the base, set up the platform, and then run round the corner and managed to get himself into a very good position in between the backs, as we said, and picked them off and powered over for a score.
Yeah, so 12-0 is the scoreline at half-time. I'd imagine that both Fergus Pringle and Graham Shield will be laying into their respective players just to sharpen things up, maybe be a little bit clearer in their minds in terms of their decision making and their overall play, because of the number of errors that have been made in the first half. But nevertheless, the top two sides in action this afternoon at half time, and very little between them, just 12 points separating the sides. Now let's turn our attentions to the women's game, because Scotland's women's squad travel to New Zealand next week to compete in the Rugby World Cup, and this week 32 players were selected to represent their country on the world stage.
In every child there lives a dream, but every dream is built on the support and sacrifice of those around you. Lifts to early morning training sessions, new kit, boots, gum shields, reminding you you've got the skills to run rings around the boys. Words of wisdom, of encouragement, making you feel like you can do anything. But dreams need more than just belief. They need opportunity. They need people to set a course, to break down barriers, to show what is possible. Though it's been a while since we reached the summit, we knew it could be done. 12 years of working, progressing, believing. 12 years of highs and lows, all leading to this moment for the chosen 32. Their dreams came true. Now they rise together to carry Scotland's.
Scotland's women then heading to New Zealand in what is going to be a very, very memorable tournament for them on the world stage. Fantastic opportunity for them to head to the Southern Hemisphere to take on the world's best in the women's game. 32 players carefully selected, and we certainly wish them all the best as we turn our attentions back will be heading back from the changing rooms back out onto the field for the start of the second half. Reminder the scoreline 12-0 to Watsonians.
After early morning sessions or
So the visitors Boroughmuir then heading back onto the field of play. Side second in the table, Graham Shields charges so far this season. Just the one defeat coming away at Ayrshire Bulls on the 20th of August, 49 points to 7, but trailing at half time here at Myreside by 12 points to 0. The two tries, two Watsonian scores coming first and second in the second minute of the first half. Rory Brand, scrum half, over from close range, and then Brand linking up with the Watsonians number 8 Ben Muncaster to score the second Watsonians try 4 minutes before the interval. There's the Watsonian side out. The FOSROC league leaders then looking to extend their advantage, having come into this game having played 5 matches, 4 wins and 1 defeat. And their defeat, of course, also coming at the hands of Ayrshire Bulls, 24 points to 17 back on the 26th of August. Our match referee out and in position, Rudy Campbell. The second half then gets underway. Watsonians are able to gather the kick-off, and it was Angus Guthrie who played the ball out for half-time. Guthrie immediately involved at the start of the second half, winning that clearance downfield at the start of the second period. And Brand, the scrum half, who's been a really influential Watsonians player, and plays the ball down. That's allowed to bounce and almost end up in touch, but picked up there by Adam Scott. Boroughmuir, I would imagine, will want to come out a much more determined side and focused side in this second half, showing some of the form that served them well so far this season. Trying around the corner there was Ronan Kerr. Bruce Berg has been replaced by Matt Curry, and a change in the Watsonians midfield. We'll keep an eye out for further changes as well, as Boroughmuir will look to get hands on the ball in some territory early on in the second period. Another change to tell you about: Liam McConnell is on for Callum Atkinson, so that's a change in the Boroughmuir second row. And there is a quick touch immediately for Liam McConnell wearing the blue scrum hat as it's worked its way out towards Scott Robinson on that right hand side. All Boroughmuir in the early stages of this second half as they look to orchestrate something, getting closer towards the 22, and McConnell has been involved now on 2 or 3 occasions in a second half, almost 90 seconds old. Boroughmuir playing in their solid blue, royal blue jerseys this afternoon, continuing to batter away at this Watsonians defence. Swan over the ball at the moment, has a look towards the right hand side. Delicate kick from Bergen, and that's picked off very well, just the fingertips on the turf there as Watsonians trying to gather possession of the ball, conceding the penalty though on the edge of the 22. Player swallowed up as he took the ball into the contact situation. And Neil Clancy, well, Graham Shield has got the territory he'd be looking for in the early stages of this second half. He'll want a finish, want a positive end outcome.
Yeah, they came out with a lot more intent in the second half, and they've been direct and accurate. That was a great kick there over the top from Bergen. It was Lee Miller who was in the full-back position trying to gather the ball, and because he was already travelling at a rate of knots towards the ground, when he gathered the ball, he was already behind his supporting players, which meant it was easy to target him from the on-rushing Boroughmuir defensive line at that point, because Lee Miller had the ball in his hand. So it was a good bit of time to put the pressure on, and Boroughmuir have won a penalty from it, and Bergen will get a chance to try and narrow the lead.
Now you think back to the first half, and from the edge of the 22, just left of centre, he had an option to go for the posts or go for the corner. He overcooked the kick to the corner, but this time he's going to try and at least land points from the tee to get Boroughmuir off and running in this contest. 12-0, looking to make it 12-3. Bergen, that's better from the fly half, and that's Boroughmuir off and running in this game, beginning to eat into the Watsonians' advantage. And you can see again, it was taken on the deck. It was Bergen who kicked forward as one of the Watsonians players was lying prostrate on the ground, Harrison Courtney. And minutes later, Bergen was able to slot over the points. It was Lee Miller, I think, was trying to take the ball on the deck. Yeah,
it was Lee Miller that was in the fullback position trying to gather it, but you can see that the Watsonians players have to work hard to get round to try and clear out and secure that ball. So, you know, it was good play, good hunting in packs by Boroughmuir, and it was good to see somebody as well kick a penalty, because last night in the Knights Heriots game, there was opportunities to kick for the post and get the 3 points, and I thought it was maybe a gentleman's agreement that they just all agreed that it was tries only. But it's nice to see Bergen go for the sticks and get a penalty, and it's now they've got 9 points to try and overturn. Ian
Carmichael readies himself. Instructions now coming the way of Callum Smith. Loose head with the call. And then it's a bit of an overthrow there. It's eventually picked up there by Patrick Harrison, and Watsonians now through Callum Wilson. Campbell Wilson up towards the edge of the 22. Good work from Campbell Wilson. Out towards the left hand side through the hands of Miller once again. Watsonians now bringing Matt Curry into play. The offload from Curry, and it was on towards Dominic Coetzee, and the fullback is in for a try, and that's how to finish off a move. And as Boroughmuir for parts of the first half huffed and puffed a little bit, they started the second period with those 3 points, but a misjudgment in the line out, a good piece of work originally by Patrick Harrison, and then the run here from Mark Curry, the replacement, with the offload on towards the full-back. They had players queuing up there, Dale, to finish off that move.
Yeah, I think the impact of Curry, that's what they do. The ball's flat on the line there, and he just runs into the space, manages to draw the last defender and put Coetzee in for a score, and he was brilliant against Wolves a few weeks ago. But you know, that comes back to the old adage of the fact that after you've scored or conceded points, try and secure the ball or get the ball into a position where you're not in danger. Boroughmuir from the restart were not able to clear their lines and get the ball away from inside their own half, and that's came off a line out. That's came off a Boroughmuir line out at that was overthrown. Harrison was able to gather it back, and it set up that platform for Coetzee to go in for a score.
And Miller then looking to line up this conversion, 1 from 2. What will they do with his third one? And that is just wide of the uprights there. So 17-3 is the scoreline, and Watsonians have shown in previous matches that when they get up ahead of steam in the second half, they can rack up the points. Just looking to see if Watsonians have made some further changes. Of course, they've got the likes of Carl Davis on the bench, and you'd imagine if he's fit and fresh. In fact, there's Carl Davis is on for Patrick Harrison. I think we got a glimpse of Carl Davis a moment ago. He again is an influential player and can produce something out of very little, particularly if he's throwing in the opposition 22.
Yeah, he's been a player that I think every game that I've seen Watsonians, he's one of the players that gets praised time and time again, as does that man Carl Main coming onto the field for Campbell Wilson. He's again just showing the strength and depth this Watsonians team has, but it's been a reasonably good performance from Patrick Harrison, but Carl Davis, he's been Mr. Consistent for Watsonians in that hooker jersey, and he brings that experience onto this field. And I think Boroughmuir with that penalty in that start to the second half, they certainly woke the opposition up, and they know they're in for a battle now.
Looking for that 4-try bonus point as McConnell again does well to win the ball in the line out for Boroughmuir. That spills at the hands of Scott McGinley. Penalty though awarded. Boroughmuir players get themselves back onto their feet, and that's a sore one for them, having their first points in the early stages of the second half, to concede so quickly. But how often do we see it, as Dale mentioned, about remaining focused, and that particularly just after you score. There again, the focus, Jack Bergen, he's kicked to touch there, doesn't find touch. Not the first time we've seen him make a mistake from hand in the game, and that will add to his own personal frustration as the ball eventually is in touch, and it is a Boroughmuir throw in, but it's the other side of the 22.
Is a fly half not making touch from a penalty worse or equal to a hooker thrown on squint? Because I think it's easier to kick out or like a penalty and make sure you hit touch. I think line-outs are a little bit more complicated, but for doing your job, that's criminal. That's 2 occasions that he's not been able to find touch, and it just puts pressure on. But Boroughmuir are fortunate they've got the ball back in their hand and they can throw into this line-out.
I suppose a hooker is throwing into a moving target, and it has to be straight. As ball taken on there by Scott Robertson, and back it comes now. Rhys Tate. I'm not seeing as much of Tate as some of the Boroughmuir fans would have wanted, I'm sure, but there's still plenty of time for him to get involved in the game. A full spin 360 there from Callum Ram as it's recycled by Swan once again. Delicate play from Boroughmuir through the hands as they try and encroach that 22 once more. Swan picks up once again on towards McGinley, closing in on that 22. There'll be some urgency now shown by these Boroughmuir players. Bergen with the hands, and again juggled by the forwards, the onrushing Boroughmuir forwards there. They could not take that ball and grasp it cleanly there, as it just dislodged from the palm of the hand of one of the forwards, went forward, and as a consequence Miller now has the chance to play the ball downfield here. But this was some quick hands there, Bergen, and it just deflecting off the forehand there of Callum Smith, and just enough for the referee to signal the penalty. Yeah,
Callum Smith knocked on, and it was Jerry Blythe Lafferty who was actually in front. As you can see, he's on the field of play. He came on a minute ago, but he was in an offside position when he gathered the ball just as Smith knocked on, so it gives Watsonians the chance from the penalty kick downfield. Carl Davis, he'll get his first chance to throw into the line out, and this is the sort of opportunity he likes. He might be off the top, but if they bring it into a maul, expect to see him burrowed down at the base of that, and he can certainly mix it up at first receiver too. They like to use him as a bit of a pivot, because he's a pinball when he gets the ball in hand in open field as well.
There's Gregor Brown on for the captain, Scott McGinley. So another change there for Boroughmuir. They're coming thick and fast, as we expect at this stage in the contest. And now, after a period of half-time deliberation between the two coaches and the respective teams, it gives them an idea of how the respective players will cope in the early stages. There's the second half and how they react as Ben Muncaster receives a bit of treatment, but we'll head back to his clutch of forwards. Of course, Carl Davis, not one of the tallest front row players, is on the shorter side these days, but he's hugely effective, very powerful character, a bit like the He-Man figure Ram Man, in terms of how he would put himself about in the pitch.
Yeah, he's very effective. He's, I can't sing his praises high enough. Good, accurate line out yet again, and Watsonians now ball in hand through main, look to try and set up a platform to strike from.
Then back to Brand. There's Davis. Pass, not one of his finest, but continued forward. Lee Miller into that 22. Too many covering defenders there, forcing the knock on Watsonians. Had a couple of near things before knocking forward. 10 minutes of the second half gone. We mentioned quite a number of replacements. Of course, a further try to Watsonians and the opening points for Boroughmuir in this 10 minutes of the second half we've witnessed. 17-3 the scoreline, and Dale, I mean, this is important times for Boroughmuir, because you feel that they've had a heavy defeat away to Ayrshire Bulls. If they were to concede again fairly soon, they would feel very much up against it.
Yeah, I think Watsonians and Ayrshire Bulls are certainly the two teams that have really stood out so far, but Boroughmuir Bears have got a lot to say about that in terms of their performances. They've improved since the sprint series, and certainly they'll be looking to try and use this as a barometer of where they are. And they're certainly not out the fight yet, but they need to score soon to try and make sure they're back into it. But that's a huge run into Lee Miller.
Collision. Miller is going to be all right. He'll get himself back up onto his feet there. Another change, of course. Martin McGinley is on. We mentioned McGinley. Well, he's 18. He's on the deck at the moment after a solid collision there. And Swan now reaching in, you can see, with the boot, looking to launch this one forward. Does so. High kick. Chases on now. Just trying to read the flight of the ball, but it just drifts beyond the touchline, bounces straight into touch there. And another mistake from hand as they are mounted up during the course of the game. So we'll come back. You see in between that 10 and 22 in the Boroughmuir half. The Skugel is on for Bobby Bratton. So a further change in the front row. Look at this big collision again. Just right into Lee Miller there. Scott Robinson on to Lee Miller. Miller signalling he's okay, he's going to get back to his feet there, and another solid one coming in from Martin McGinley. That
was like the F1 drivers when they're in a crash and they put the thumbs up after. That was what Lee Miller done, just to signal that he was still okay. But that's when Robson's effective, and again Cal Davis making the impact off the bench with an accurate line out.
Watsonians is looking for some space, trying to find a chink in this Boroughmuir defence. Brand tries to work it again, flat pass rather than going round the corner. Brand has it once more towards that left hand side. Again, the Watsonians players remaining very mobile as Brand picks up once again. There's plenty of activity there. Miller tried to reach from the deck there, Muncaster alongside him. It's back towards Brand, the scrum half again. Now on towards Guthrie on this left hand side. Guthrie half through there, is caught in the challenge, just short of that 22. Boroughmuir look to strip, they've managed to win some turnover ball. Swan launches one forward, bounces a few times, won't find touch though. Watsonians, three players just along the fringes of their 22. Patterson just goes to deck there. They will retain possession of the ball for Watsonians. Having said that, it's just too much for him. He took the ball into contact, couldn't release in the end, and the penalty is awarded. And that was good work there from Boroughmuir, just closing in on the Watsonians player as he was taking the ball into that contact situation, and there was no means of him being able to recycle the ball.
That's an exasperated version of the one that happened before with Lee Miller. You know, they've passed in field, they've passed to Patterson, Coates are passed to Patterson, so Coates obviously in front of Patterson, so is the rest of the teammates, and when you looked at that back you could see the sheer volume of blue shirts that were there. If he can't break that first tackle, he's getting snaped, he's getting put to ground, and he's getting hunted down with the ball, and that's exactly what happened. And we did say Boroughmuir are here to try and get a level of where they're at, and they're certainly up for the fight here. They're certainly able to weather the storm from Watsonians, and they're in a very fortunate position, a very nice position here to try and launch an attack.
Almost 15 minutes of the second half gone. Boroughmuir then launching it forward. No immediate jumpers in the line on this occasion, but Boroughmuir have secured possession of the ball. A similar position to when Watsonians scored in that first half, but Boroughmuir again coughing up possession, and that will really frustrate Graham Shield and his coaching staff, having gotten into such a good position and platform.
Yeah, Jerry Blythe Lafferty is a good hooker and good throw into the line out, but he threw it all the way back to the 1970s there because there was no jumpers in the line out or anything. and it was just then ended up engulfed with players, and there was no way that ball was coming out. I mean, as soon as there was no jumpers there, and he got himself in a bad position to try and carry forward. In those positions, you kind of have to carry yourself back. You have to open your body up to your teammates and just take a clatter in the back. But they've tried to drive forward, and it's just ended up in a Watsonians ball from what was a good position, which, as we said.
The next thing we'll see is the heel of the boot being used to form a position in the pitch to kick a penalty. It will be, a repeat of what used to happen years back. But it's also worth pointing out, we've been talking quite a bit about the league table. Watsonians leading, of course, 21 points from 5 games. Boroughmuir 18 points from 5 matches. Ayrshire Bulls, just the 4 games played, 3 victories, 1 defeat, 14 points. So as you mentioned just a little bit earlier on, Dale, I mean, they're very much in the mix and ready, and they'll be very much mindful of any slip-ups from either of these sides. They'll be right on them. Yeah, and I think when you look at that table, obviously you say Ayrshire Bulls have played 4, and I think people always they play the games before they've actually happened. The Ayrshire Bulls have got to play Southern Knights in their spare fixture. Obviously they're going to be playing Stirling Wolves later on, following this game at 5 o'clock. So people have probably put that down to 2 wins already for the Bulls, but Boroughmuir have got points on the board, and so have Heriots, and that's what matters. So I tend to look at the points column as opposed to the games played, because you still have to win those games and anything can happen. So Boroughmuir will be happy with the position that they've got themselves in at the halfway stage, but they're under no illusions that to get in that top 2, they're going to have to beat some good teams and put in some good performances, and it starts here at Myreside. All about the consistency as Muncaster picks up at the base of the scrum, round on that blind side. Wasn't much for him to work with there, but he's gained some ground, and Brand's in behind now, looking to feed the forwards. Watsonians protecting their advantage. 2 tries scored in the first half. 2 minutes into the game, 4 minutes before the interval. Brand's kick is charged down though, and that's good work picked up there by the number 4 Jack Fisher. The powerful lock forward on now towards Swan. Swan's pass just a little bit too far there for Bergen. He didn't quite have the go-go gadget arms to reach out and grab the ball there, but it's picked up now by the backs. The midfield looking to Swan round as well. The penalty though has been awarded to Watsonians once more. A Boroughmuir player this time engulfed by Watsonians jerseys, unable to release possession of the ball, and Watsonians defensively did very well there, but you sensed that was half a chance for Boroughmuir to get back on the score sheet quite quickly. I would say it was more than half a chance, and firstly you got to praise the work from Matt Curry on the ground. He managed to get himself in a good position over the ball. I don't think Lee Miller's made touch there, but Boroughmuir looked a bit shell-shocked when they got the ball back, but now they get a chance yet again to try and break from deep with Jenkins. So Jenkins running into Carl Davis. Davis gets back to his feet, recycled by Swan, no, taken on this time by Ewan Ferry. He's toppled to the ground just on the edge of that 10-metre line. Recycled again by Bergen, on through the hands out towards Ronan Kerr on this right-hand side, making some ground closer towards that 22. Recycled by Bergen, the fly half once more. Carl Davis with another tackle. Swan in behind, tries the grubber kick, ricochets off shins and knees, comes back towards the Boroughmuir 9, who's on the deck, and is able to plant it back to clutch of forwards. That's the Watsonians 10-metre line out there towards Bergen. Brand was coming through to try and close off that option through the hands. This time it's Jack Fisher with that black scrum cap on. Swan over the ball at the moment. Swan has a little look at the options on that right hand side again. We've got some powerful runners down the blind side. Davis with the tackle, just slowing up this latest Boroughmuir charge. Reaching in the Swan. Davis still on the bench, on the deck rather. He's come off the bench. The ball now works its way out there towards Rhys Tate on this left hand side between the 10 and 22. Boroughmuir showing the urgency, need to recycle quickly. Handling error from Watsonians, another penalty opportunity for the visiting side. A minute shy of the hour mark, 17 points to 3. Yes, Carl Davis was on the deck rather than on the bench on that occasion.
Yeah, Joe Jenkins there, I think, made it really difficult for Muncaster to get that ball back, and I think that goes back to his Sevens days where you don't get a lot of protection if you get caught in contact, and you need to really get that ball away from your body as far as possible to make it difficult for the jackal or the player looking to get the ball to stop them getting such a strong body position. And that's exactly what happened there. Muncaster went for it, had a bite, just couldn't get the strength in the position, so when the clearing players came in, he knocked the ball on, and and Boroughmuir survive here and manage to keep the ball in hand at this scrum.
Rudy Swan then feed the ball in as Joe Reynolds comes on for Lee Miller. So a slightly different option for Watsonians at fly half for Rory Brand to think about. There is Brand in the picture just now, dashing in, putting pressure on Swan, the two nines coming together. The broader smile on the face of the Watsonians nine, who scored the try this afternoon. And his away side are leading 17-3 with a quarter of the game left to play.
Yeah, I don't think either scrum half wanted a bit of that there, because they're equal size. They usually pick on people about twice their size, the scrum half, so I think when they're they're having to fight together, they don't like that. But you can see the pressure coming on here from Watsonians. You can see it start to bobble up. Boroughmuir getting a little bit ahead of steam, but Watsonians certainly putting on a bit of pressure up front, especially when they've got the likes of Scougal to come off the bench and Cal Davis. They're almost like for like replacements, and that again alludes to the strength and depth here of the Watsonians team. But the Martin McGinley and Blythe Lafferty certainly under a bit of pressure in the front row, but it's just a lot of talent on the field in terms of young players that are looking to try and earn their stripes and push on in their rugby career.
19 minutes of the game left to play. Lancaster just encouraging those in front of them. Put another fine effort into this scrimmage. Boroughmuir have the put in though. Really Swan eager to get on with things. The Boroughmuir points coming in the early stages of the second half. A Bergen penalty. 3 tries for Watsonians this afternoon, as it's worked out towards the right hand side now. Reaching up well was Callum Ram, taking it one-handed but very close towards the touchline. Mindful it could be forced into touch. Swan then recycles ball. This time it's taken on there by Gregor Brown. Brown knows in the tackle, back towards Swan. Swan has options there. Bergen on towards the forwards, running into Cal Davis. Swan comes in once again. Little reverse pass this time on towards Bergen, who tried to cut a cute line there up towards the edge of the 22. Swan has it once again. Loop pass out. Bergen involved once more as it comes on now towards Ronan Kerr. Kerr tries to bring Scott the fullback into play. It will come once more. Swan the scrum half in position, but again good defensive work from Watsonians. One or two Boroughmuir players perhaps just overcooking it slightly, going in off the feet. And 17-3 remains the scoreline with 17.5 minutes left on the clock, and Edwards then a chance for him to play it downfield. Reynolds rather, Joe Reynolds.
Just counting the difference between the pace that the ball gets away from the breakdown. When I've been counting Brand, he's been getting away a couple of seconds, maybe even in between 1 and 2 seconds by the time he gets there. And there for Boroughmuir, Rudy Swan, he's been taking about 4 or 5 seconds to get the ball away from the breakdown. And you might look at the Watsonians defence and think, oh, how well organised and how well set is that? But one of the reasons is they're getting time to set up that defensive line, so they're allowed to align themselves, get in a position. Whereas the other side, Boroughmuir, are they're not afforded as much opportunity to get back into position and get their defensive shape in place because of the pace that ball's coming from Brand. So it might change, especially when Murray Johnson comes onto the field. He's a bit more of a pacey 9, but Murray Scott for Watsonians is very similar to Brand.
New State looks to have recovered from a knock to the shoulder there as the match resumes. Brand again finding some pace there as Kerr Johnson is on for Adam Scott. It's another replace there in the Boroughmuir backs. Recycled again as Watsonians continue to try and go forward, make some ground. Brand once again on towards the left hand side, bringing Lewis Berg into play. Bergen, Eastgate have been effective. They've not been perhaps at their brilliant best during the course of the game, but still effective in that midfield. Harrison Courtney coming onto that loose ball there. He's forced backwards. Brand has it once again, has a look at the options, brings Reynolds into play on through the hands of the replacement hooker now on this right hand side. Better running here from Seb Cecil. Back row forward, picked up by Brand. Just overshoots the onrushing loose ball into the edge of the 22. Brand has it once again on towards Kutsia, out towards the right hand side, and Matt Curry now has to cut back infield in that 22. And a penalty awarded, the referee coming back to the edge of that 22 for a high challenge. Watsonians awarded the penalty for the high tackle, and we've got 15.5 minutes of the game left to play. Time beginning to become the enemy for Boroughmuir now as they chase the game. And once again, Joe Reynolds just pinging that ball into the corner, looking for further opportunity, which would land Watsonians a 4th try, of course, a bonus point.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously what they're chasing now, and it's interesting to see the substitution of Kerr Johnson coming from Boroughmuir, making his debut. You know, a young player coming through. He's about 18-year-old, and he's been in the Scotland under-20s set up. And I think that's part of the thing that people have obviously been protesting about during the summer and during the spring, is in terms of the performance of the Scotland under-20s and how the Super6 is perhaps not breeding the young players. But you know, these things need time to settle, and it is the exact players like Kerr Johnson coming through young, getting some game time at this level, testing himself against quality opposition. You know, and it's the more and more we see that, the better. I think they're maybe a bit too young to maybe make their debut this afternoon, but maybe in time.
Oh, in time, yeah, give them 15, 17 years. They may well be back representing one of the two sides in action this afternoon. And it's all about impressions, isn't it? You know, when you're at an impressionable age, and it becomes part of what you come to know as a youngster.
Yeah, textbook tackle there from the youngster. But yeah, it definitely is. You know, being in this environment, being the rugby clubs themselves being welcoming community clubs, I think it is part of it. Like you start playing rugby, you're a ball boy. You know, you do the minis section, you then become a ball boy watching the senior players, your idols as your young heroes that you kind of idolise, and eventually you're in a position where you can pull on the jersey that you've been wanting to pull on for so long. So it's certainly good to see, and obviously there's different ages out there in the field, some seasoned campaigners, but some young players like Kerr Johnson coming through and getting some game time, which is great to see.
Once more the movement in the line. We'll have jumpers this time, but it comes back on that Boroughmuir side. Again, a little bit of uncertainty spinning around as Kerr Johnson was able to play the pass. It's been played forward, and it's now Harry Patterson. Patterson then again spinning around. He can really get into his running and accelerate into challenges there and evade quite often at the first tackle. Coming in there, Muncaster also looking dangerous as Brand picks up those 2 scored tries. Will go on for Rhys Tate, the closing stages of this one. Carl Davis on this time. Davis towards Carl Main. Main often has started, but on the bench this afternoon for Watsonians. And again, the home side creeping closer towards that 22. Slid through there by Connor Eastgate. He's got an educated left boot we haven't seen much of this afternoon, but that was a clever kick, just forcing Boroughmuir on their heels in towards the corner there. Joe Jenkins under a bit of pressure as the ball goes into touch, and it's an inviting opportunity and a throw in for Watsonians in Boroughmuir territory.
It was a very good kick. It was a well-weighted kick as well, just in behind the defensive line. It gave them a chance to even grab the ball and go over for a score, but what it's also done is it's put the pressure back on Boroughmuir. You kick the ball downfield, you're relieving yourself of possession, you're giving it to the opposition, but by putting that pressure on in the defensive line, you've gained it back straight away because of the pure precision and execution of that kick. So it was excellently done by Eastgate, and Carl Davis, I think he'll be licking his lips at this opportunity.
Davis then with the throw in. A little unconventional in the line there, the loose ball, but he was the target in the line. It comes back now towards the scrum half, on towards Cecil. Cecil gaining some ground. Replacement scrum half is Murray Scott. Scott has it now, just deflects off the forearm, works out its way out towards Matt Curry. Curry then back towards Matt Scott. And Scott again just becoming increasingly involved in the contest. He's got a hard act to follow because Brand was certainly very influential, but so too Reynolds since coming off the bench. Reynolds, Davis, these are effective players that look to be finishers in this contest. Loose ball on from the very beginning, closing in on a further try for Watsonians. This would secure a try bonus point. Van Niekerk gone for Phillips as well, a further replacement. Just confirmation of that, as you can see how close Watsonians are to the Boroughmuir line at the moment. They barge their way across, they're over for the score, and it's Carl Main. We talked about his qualities off the bench this time, Dale, rather than starting in that back line, and there was something almost inevitable about the opportunity when Carl Davis had the throw in inside Boroughmuir 22 territory, that there'd be some sort of finish, some sort of positive outcome for Watsonians, and there's the try bonus with what, 12 minutes of the game left to play?
Yeah, I think the difference there is that the Watsonians players all know their job. They're all in the right position, so when something did go to ground, they just set up again. It was Curry who swooped the ball up when it went to ground, and they just go through the phases again. They go through the repertoire of what they've been doing on the training field. You can see Murray Scott just shouting the orders, but it was very, very sharp there from Main. He just spotted the ball, he spotted that the defence couldn't get round enough. In those close quarters, it's difficult to get round the corner and fill that defensive line, and Carl Main done a great job of spotting that, and that's another great job with the conversion attempt as well.
Reynolds with the conversion, 24 points to 3, and in fact Conor Eastgate, I beg your pardon, it was with the conversion, as he's now in our picture. So well done to Conor Eastgate. We talked about the qualities of his left boot, and he threaded a nice kick through, which actually led to the line out, and it is indeed Eastgate who's slotted over the conversion. So 24 points to 3 as the match restarts with the kick from Jack Bergen. One in the air, Watsonians securing it through Van Niekerk, who's just on the bench we mentioned, replacing Pierce Phillips. Watsonians with the try bonus point, looking to make it 5 wins then from 6 as they sit at the top of the table, and will be anxiously watching on as Ayrshire Bulls are in action a little bit later on this afternoon. Still have that game in hand. Play downfield then by Jenkins. Ball bounces and is back on the edge of the Watsonians 22. Boroughmuir players are back, looking to then build from a deeper line position. Johnson in the pass out towards Swan on this left hand side. Up towards halfway. Changing the front row with Brandon Sweet on for Callum Smith at loose head. And Boroughmuir still working very hard. Graham Shule's side heading for just their second defeat of this new FOSROC Super 6 season, which is at pretty much the midway point now. An improving side that have just not quite been on song this afternoon. As we see Terry Blythe Lafferty involved, and Brandon Sweet getting his first touch as well. Huge figure Brandon Sweet coming onto a pass with the hands now of a fly half and half-back partnership. Swan now, he did very well just to secure possession before. He was mindful Harry Patterson was bearing down on him to force him into touch there, looking around the shoulder area to try and secure possession of the ball, but the Watsonians winger was tracking across and thundered the scrum half into touch.
Yeah, I think every rugby player will be thinking about that passage of play there, in terms of you've got the ball in your hand, it's juggling about, you can feel the pressure coming onto you, you can feel the defenders honing you down, and then they just clatter you and put you into touch. And that was a bright spark, and again it came from Ronan Kerr breaking through the line. He's been a very dangerous player in this game. Just unfortunately for him, they've not been able to get on the other side of it. They've not been able to put enough pressure on to, in terms of support, there've been not enough supporting players there and continuity in play to really build on his good work in midfield.
Back to his feet there. Next up was Gregor Brown. Carl Davis then threw the ball into a line out, and again here's possession of the ball at the moment. Davis then accelerating away. Solid challenge coming in there as the replacement made Cole Lamberton on for Harrison Courtney. Out towards this Watsonians left hand side. Looped pass there by Matt Curry. Watsonians gaining ground, and again Murray Scott will want to get himself as involved as possible, as it's a pick and go here from Van Niekerk. Back into Boroughmuir territory. Curry coming on. Watsonians then on number 8 has put in a real shift, and so too the players off the bench there. Joe Reynolds, and that's a fine kick from hand. We've bemoaned the qualities, Dale, of some kicking from hand this afternoon, but that's probably the pick of the bunch from Joe Reynolds. Yeah, and Joe Reynolds is a really experienced player. He's a brilliant player, especially with the ball in hand. He can cut a good line, but he's got that balance when he's playing 10 or 12 that he can really dictate play, and he can pin the ball about and put the team in the right areas. And you can see there, you could actually hear the cheer from the teammates, because it just puts the pressure back on Boroughmuir. There's nothing worse than being on the attack and being at the halfway line thinking you're relatively comfortable, and then all of a sudden you're kicked back downfield and you've got to throw in a defensive line out, which Boroughmuir have just done here. Managed to set up a good platform.
and they'll be looking to try and exit here as Murray Johnson just watches this one drive forward a few inches.
Muncaster remained upright there as he watched the ball sail over his head, and Boroughmuir exit takes it up to, as you see, towards that 10. 7 minutes left to play.
And this is more like what we were seeing Watsonians in the first half, playing in the right areas, asking the opposition, in this terms obviously Boroughmuir, to exit or do something, and they don't get a lot of field position, so they're now still within their, Boroughmuir are still within their own half, but Watsonians now are thinking more about attack as opposed to trying to defend the ball and keep the ball.
It comes back into Murray Scott, the scrum half, through the hands of another try scorer, Carol Main. Scott then will go in once more. Remember the try bonus point already secured for the league leaders. The ball's allowed to bounce. It's another left-footed kick from Eastgate. He's been using the boot more in the latter stages of the second half. Picked up on the deck, but immediately surrounded a bit of pressure on the Boroughmuir back line there. High challenge coming in. And you can see that, like Joe Jenkins, these players, one-on-one situations have sometimes been isolated figures, but that challenge a little bit too high, and it provides Boroughmuir with a chance to play the ball downfield.
That's a good clearance kick there from Boroughmuir, but yeah, it is exactly what you were saying there. Joe Jenkins under a little bit of pressure, but done well to try and gather the ball and weave his way out of trouble. And the kick chase from Watsonians was good, but they just couldn't isolate the man enough. They couldn't get on the ground, and they couldn't put in a good, well executed tackle to try and isolate him and target the ball.
Further movement in the Boroughmuir line. Ewan Ferry doing well to win the ball in the line out, and immediately the challenge is coming in as Boroughmuir looking to recycle some ball. In the centre again, the mobility of the Watsonians defence is clear as it's now Ewan Ferry again trying to carry with some purpose. Recycled once more by Murray Johnson. Up towards the edge of the halfway line they go once again as it's recycled by Swan. Put in a real shift at scrum half, and it's been ably assisted by Murray Johnson as well. Johnson with that pass out towards the right hand side. He's over the ball at the moment again. I mean, look at the options. Boroughmuir again continuing to work it up towards that 10 metre line. Another penalty being awarded to Watsonians. Muncaster, broad smile on his face as he appreciates the efforts of the teammates there, and the Boroughmuir players cutting frustrated figures now, having come in with some well, more than positive vibes, but maybe feeling the effects of a week off, having lost a little bit of sharpness and a bit of fluency that they would have, having come in after back-to-back victories.
Yeah, I think that the time that they've had off is perhaps paid, is perhaps shown here, because they do look a little bit disjointed and rusty, and I think you can add to that there's a lot of changes in personnel. There's been a few changes from the big win against Stirling Wolves a fortnight ago, so obviously there's been a few factors in this performance, but overall you would say that Watsonians, if they were to say you'll get a win and try bonus against Boroughmuir and continue your surge at the top of the table, I think they would have taken that at the start of the day. They've not conceded a try either, and that's something that they did do against a poorer Stirling Wolves team.
Yeah, it's almost a restart for this Boroughmuir Bears side this afternoon, or after this afternoon anyway, as it's more of the same from Watsonians. Carl Davis then. Again, it's time to have a look up. Carl Davis, powerful running. Is he going to back himself for the line there? Just short of the line. Reinforcements now coming in. You can see Eastgate busying himself at inside centre just to try and help out the forwards. The pick and go now, and it's a loose ball over the ball at the moment. A chance now for Murray Scott again to recycle. Spread out towards Curry. Curry then on towards Guthrie, and Guthrie, has he been able to ground the ball? He's practically over that try line, and Guthrie, who was involved in the very last action in the first half, he was mighty close to finishing off a fine move there. And Boroughmuir from their own try line just prodding it forward, and Joe Jenkins protecting the ball now as Boroughmuir looking for a better opportunity to exit 5 metres from their own line just now. But Dale, that was a mighty close chance there for Boroughmuir, for Watsonians rather, as Boroughmuir have coughed up more possession, and a solo run here for Guthrie, like a skier down a slope, slaloms his way through the Boroughmuir defence, over for try number 5, and he was denied moments earlier, but coming onto that little chip kick at pace, as we see this again, and a fine finish from Angus Guthrie.
Yeah, really good finish, especially when he almost, he almost scored a try just seconds before. But you can see Muncaster again, ball in hand. He's aware of his position on the field. He's aware of his teammates. And just watch here as the ball's kicked over. Murray Johnson just giving it to Bergen. It's obviously chipped over, and it's been well gathered by Muncaster, and knows that he's got a player with pace and guile, on his shoulder, and he just weaves his way through and gets that score that he almost got a couple of seconds ago. And the shrill of the whistle means that the extras have been added from Watsonians to the boot of Conor Eastgate as well. So it's certainly been a little cherry on top of the cake for Watsonians here.
But another gift from Boroughmuir.
Yeah, I know, but I think before that, the great defensive work from young Kerr Johnson on the line. But sometimes you've got to throw caution to the wind, and they tried a bit of inventive play from a 22 restart. It looks like Boroughmuir might have something to say still in this game.
Yes, it's recycled very quickly there by Murray Johnson. Johnson up with play just now as Boroughmuir, and Johnson again just on the edge of the 22, looking to recycle ball again through the hands of Bergen, and Watsonians have been able to regroup. They wanted to protect the scoreline and not concede a try in this game as the ball has been dislodged again. Joe Jenkins was coming racing in there, the ball just dislodged from the winger's hands. A minute of the game left to play, 31 points to 3. So defensively they've been strong, in attack they've certainly been clinical, and there is our player of the match this afternoon, Dale. And I don't think there's many would argue with that. The likes of Rory Brand have put in a real shift in the 70 or so minutes as he just walks past Muncaster there, but all credit to Ben.
Yeah, I think it justified my decision with that last try. I think that he's been industrious in the loose. He obviously got that good try, but he's assisted his teammates well. But I think the tone and his aggression in defence is something that really made him stood out this afternoon. He looked like he was playing for something more than just a victory this afternoon for Watsonians, and he's certainly deserving of the FOSROC Super 6 player of the match.
Yes, Watsonians scrummage under pressure there in the final 10 seconds of the regulation 80 as Boroughmuir are going for consolation at this stage against their near neighbours, and it's picked up again. Bergen quickly through the hands. Jenkins just again adjusts his running position. Jink to the right hand side and straightened up. Reinforcements coming in. They want to recycle the ball. Johnston does well. He's able to find there McConnell, who was very lively in the first few minutes since coming off the bench, but has been quieter in the last 15 or so. Ball is dislodged. Comes back towards Bergen again. Loop pass out there towards the right hand side. Graham on towards Fisher. 14 and 4 linking up well. Back inside it comes, again taken on by McConnell, busying himself a bit more in the last few minutes of the game, and they go forward as Carl Davis remains upright in the latest challenge. Boroughmuir still have it. McGinley, real solid challenge coming in. McGinley, a tackled player there, Cole Lamberton. But again, they're looking to try and spread the ball. Determination in the face of Gregor Brown. Recycled ball now through the hands of the scrum half on towards Callum Ram. Remains upright. Jenkins is in behind him. And the Boroughmuir players now rushing forward to recycle. Murray Johnston with that pass once more. You can see how close they are towards the try line, desperate to try and get something off the bench. Brandon Sweet with the pass towards the right hand side. Forwards taking it in turns to try and do something as Johnston recycles again on towards Bergen. Bergen, he plays the ball more or less on the deck, and Boroughmuir finally find a way through, and it's the replacement hooker Jerry Blythe Lafferty with the last lines of the script delivered this afternoon at Myreside, and Boroughmuir not to be denied a try, but scant consolation. A fine pass on the deck there by Bergen, who was tackled by Carl Davis, but it was Davis's opposite number who finishes off the scoring this afternoon with that try, and Boroughmuir at least leave with a try on the board, but they'll be disappointed to be second best this afternoon. Yeah,
I'll credit to all the players, because they've certainly put on a little bit of a more polished performance in the second half, but I think that's what Boroughmuir deserve. I think they have played well, and they've competed against what is a really, really classy Watsonian side, and as Bergen just adds the 2 points, I think they'll welcome the score. Watsonians will be gutted that they were able to close the shop for the whole game and then they just opened it for the last minute, but they'll be chuffed to get the bonus point victory. It was certainly a tetchy opening, but in the end, the second half, I think Watsonians just proved they're a little bit too strong for their capital neighbours. Yeah,
you have to say that it was leaving the best to last there for Boroughmuir going forward. It was their most meaningful attack and spell for a long time in the Watsonians 22, and it proved important. Dividends there with the try. There's the final score, 31 points to 10, and a win for Watsonians. It means at the top of the table that after 6 games they've won 5, lost 1, and they will then move on to 26 points, but they'll be very keen to follow the fortunes of the match coming up a little bit later with Ayrshire Bulls up against Stirling. And that, of course, still to come this weekend. But let's take a look back at some of the highlights during the course of the last 80 minutes. And this was the start of the second half. Of course, at half-time, Watsonians were protecting a lead of 12 points to 0. And this was good piece of work, good chip through there from Jack Bergen. His opposite number, Lee Miller, coming through, was caught with the ball on the deck. Penalty awarded by the match referee, and it was Jack Bergen's first opportunity of the second half, at least, to get points for the visiting side. Yeah, and I think that was what they deserved after coming out with a lot of pressure. You know, they came out the sheds with a different intent, but the introduction of Matt Curry was he was a replacement for Berg. It just shown there, you know, straight away after that penalty, Watsonians got a reply score, and it was all made by Curry there. You know, you can see the acute line he runs. It's a flat pass. He runs back in through the gap, and he just puts Coates in the hole, and he goes over for a score. And that just coming the matter of 2 or 3 minutes after that penalty, so Boroughmuir had little or no time to get themselves set after reducing their arrears to 9 points, and a fine finish from Clancy, the full-back, to score the third of the tries for Watsonians this afternoon. And this then was the try bonus, this coming through one of the replacements, Carl Main. Again, just a succession of opportunities to press Boroughmuir back on their line. Time and time again they were knocking at the door, and it was Carl Main, who we've said often starts but came off the bench. One of the many Watsonians players there to be very effective off the bench today. Yeah, he's been starting most of the time, as you've said, and he's a player that plays with a lot of aggression. Just watch him, blue skull cap, he's aware of the danger. He can see he's hunting the ball down, and he can see that the Boroughmuir players have not filled that gap in defence. They've not got round the corner, and you know, as he choosing his scrum guard in jubilation, he's obviously happy to get on the score sheet. Now, Angus Guthrie moments earlier thought he was in for a try. This little kick from Bergen. Guthrie now receiving the pass and just weaves his way through that Boroughmuir defence at pace, rounds the attempted tackle there from Paul Bogey as well to finish things off. But this little chip from Bergen, just trying something a little bit different. It was Muncaster that read the flight of the chip, releasing Guthrie, and that's a fine score. Yeah, there's nothing wingers want more than just to have that open field, and it was a good option. Boroughmuir had to try and go from deep, and Bergen put in the kick, but you know, when it's gathered there by Muncaster, look at the space that's there, that's afforded to Guthrie, and he can just change his line of running and just squeeze in beside the post under a little bit of pressure, but there was no question about he was going over there for a score. Yeah, fine score from a Watsonians point of view, certainly, but Boroughmuir, all credit to them. A period of intense pressure, certainly inside the Watsonians 22. Bergen's ball off the deck after being tackled by Carl Davis, and it was Jerry Blythe Lafferty, the replacement hooker, that was just on his fly half shoulder to finish things off. And Boroughmuir, well, deserving of something more than just a penalty goal for their efforts this afternoon. They were not quite on song in the first half, but they closed off the game much better going forward, and they'll be pleased at least to have scored a try, if nothing else. Yeah, I think that, you know, that it was going to take something a little bit special to unlock this Watsonians defence, and that ball off the deck was really good. You know, it was certainly an interesting ball, and Bergen managed to just have a player on his shoulder at the right time, and I think that's what Boroughmuir deserved. They deserved something a little bit tighter from that game. I think the score, you know, it's not often that it happens, but the score certainly reflects the way that this game panned out. Yeah, their player of the match is still in the huddle. Let's have a look at the league table then, with one fixture left to play this weekend. It means that Watsonians do extend their lead to 26 points now, so they're ahead by 8 points from Boroughmuir, both sides having played the 6 matches. Heriots in third with victory, of course, 3 wins and 3 defeats, 15 points against victory in Southern Knights last night. Stirling Wolves still to get off and running, but Ayrshire Bulls will certainly have a say in those top places with a couple of games in hand, and we'll see them in action a bit later. They're playing the bottom 2 sides, and as you said, Dale, I mean, on paper they look to be fairly straightforward games for the Bulls, but there's nothing straightforward in this competition.
No, there's not, because you look at that table and you see the Knights and Stirling Wolves at the bottom. You know, they'll be trying desperately to get something on the board, especially Stirling Wolves will be wanting to get some sort of points on the board, but you know, up at the top 4 teams, it's quite congested. Watsonians, they've got a little bit of a cushion now, even with the Ayrshire Bulls games in hand, but you know, it's going to be an interesting second half of this campaign, because you know, there's the reverse fixtures now come, and the games that were perhaps tight in the opening stages, they can turn on their head, and we don't really know where the you know, the top 2 places are going to be, but it certainly looks like, you know, the likes of Heriots, Boroughmuir, Watsonians and Ayrshire Bulls are going to be hunting for those top 4 places, and certainly those top 2 and looking for a place in the final. And
we know that the Bulls and Watsonians have played each other twice already, so they stay away for a little longer before the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing. You know, some of the fixtures don't really align in a traditional format, in terms of you play everybody once, then you go and play everybody again, and they've both visited each other's patches, and I think that, you know, that's perhaps quite good for Watsonians and Ayrshire Bulls, because they know that they don't have to. They can probably do a little bit more squad management, you know, rotate the squads and keep players fresh. I think you've seen that this afternoon with the likes of Van Niekerk and Main on the bench, even Joe Reynolds and Cal Davis getting a rest for Watsonians. So, you know, they've been able to reshuffle their pack as it will, and you know, they'll certainly be hunting the top 2 places.
And there is the captain of Watsonians with the player of the match this afternoon, Ben Muncaster, the Watsonians number 8, a fine performance, and Lee Miller, I'm sure, delighted to have him in the Watsonians ranks as they're looking to add to the Super 6 Sprint Series victory. And he looks quite chuffed. He's got a medal around his neck, no wonder.
Yes, yeah, and I'll wave for his fan base there as well. But I think he had a good afternoon. You know, there was a lot of good players there from Watsonians. I think there was a lot of poor players from both sides as well. In terms of errors, maybe not poor, I think that's a bit disingenuous, but you know, it was sloppy play from at times from players who we've known to be very, very accurate. But I think in terms of accuracy overall, Ben Muncaster, he was good with the ball in hand in defence. He got his try and he got an assist as well. So yeah, it was certainly a good performance from the big number 8, and I think he's got a point to prove in terms of trying to get in some sort of Edinburgh set-up again.
Yeah, so Watsonians continue to fly high at the top of the table with a 31 points to 10 victory over Boroughmuir this afternoon. For Graham Shields' sides, it's a relatively short journey back, of course, to Meggetland. You'll want to reset after a disappointing result, but certainly you'll hope that this doesn't affect the overall campaign, because it has been one of development and onwards and upwards, that mindset from the Boroughmuir coaching staff and players. But victory to the league leaders, Watsonians, as they continue to lead the way, fly the flag in this FOSROC Super 6 Series. Reminder that there's further action to come with the Stirling Wolves up against Ayrshire Bulls a little later on this afternoon. But from myself, Stuart McFarlane, and from my co-commentator there, Clancy, thanks for watching.